Hare Krishna everybody, this is Krishna Dasa and I welcome you all to today's episode of Narada Bhakti Sutra. Today we are going to cover Shlokas 1 to 6, but before we begin, I would like to introduce Kalpana Mataji, who is also in the studio with me today.
Hare Krishna Guruji, happy to be here. I'm really looking forward to learning more about Narada Bhakti Sutra from you. So, Guruji, before you start, can I ask you a couple of questions?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm curious to know what made you take up Narada Bhakti Sutra right after the Bhagavad Gita, and how do you think it will help us?
That's a very good question. See, in the Bhagavad Gita, Shri Krishna explains the various types of yoga through which we can attain mukti or liberation. He then explains why the path of Bhakti Yoga is superior to all other yogas. Now the Bhakti Sutra builds upon this concept and explains how we can achieve perfection in Bhakti Yoga. See, in the Bhagavad Gita we learn how to attain mukti or liberation. In the Bhakti Sutra, we learn how Bhakti is even more precious than mukti. The Bhagavad Gita provides the foundations upon which Bhakti Sutra is based. So once we study the Bhagavad Gita and understand Krishna's message of Bhakti Yoga being superior to all other yogas, we will then be able to appreciate the focus on Bhakti Yoga provided by Narad Ji in the Narada Bhakti Sutra. Hope this makes sense.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, so Guruji, I would like to know one more thing. What is the essence of this scripture? In the sense, what would be that one life-changing takeaway in your experience?
In my experience.
Yeah.
See, as human beings, we always want to know what is the purpose of life and what is our ultimate goal.
Right.
Now, this scripture, the Bhakti Sutra, it helps us understand that the ultimate goal of human life is to strive for and achieve the divine grace of God through Bhakti Yoga. It also explains how we can succeed in the path of Bhakti Yoga. To me, this scripture provides the right direction and purpose to my life, along with clear guidelines on how to succeed in reaching the ultimate goal. Hope that makes sense.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're most welcome. So now we can start with the Shlokas, and feel free to interrupt me if you have any other questions.
Sure.
Okay, so now let's start with Shloka 1. Shloka 1 says, athāto bhaktiṁ vyākhyāsyāmaḥ, which means, now therefore the doctrine of devotion we shall explain. As discussed earlier during the introduction to the Bhakti Sutra, Narada Muni had first written Narada Smriti, which speaks about dharma and various ritualistic aspects. But he was not satisfied with this work. So he then wrote the Narada Pancharatra, where he explains aspects of knowledge and rituals mixed with bhakti. But he was not satisfied with that as well. So then he writes the Narada Bhakti Sutra, which deals with pure bhakti. Now that is one of the reasons why he starts the first shloka with the statement athāto bhaktiṁ. He is saying, now that I have already spoken about the ritualistic aspects and the mixing of rituals and knowledge with bhakti, I am now explaining to you about pure bhakti. We can approach the topic of bhakti from either intellectual standpoint, or we can approach it from the heart and an emotional standpoint. Narada Muni approaches bhakti from the heart and emotional standpoint. But there are other texts that deal with bhakti from an intellectual standpoint. The best example is the Shandilya Bhakti Sutra. If you see, in that version, the first verse or the first shloka is athāto bhakti jigyasa, which means now we shall examine and analyze in detail what bhakti actually consists of. You can see the difference. In the intellectual version, Chandilya Muni wants to analyze and examine what bhakti is. Whereas in the version that Narada Muni has written, there is no analyzing, intellectual analyzing or examination. He just says, let us explain the Bhakti Sutra. Now, because bhakti itself deals with divine love, which needs to be felt and realized, that is why we prefer the Narada Bhakti Sutra, which is the most authentic and genuine approach towards understanding and practicing pure bhakti. Now, when Narad Ji says athāto, it could also mean one more thing. What is that other thing? The other thing could be the prerequisites. He is assuming that as students of Bhakti Yoga, we have already fulfilled the prerequisites for walking on the path of Bhakti Yoga. What are those prerequisites? According to Ramanuja, the teacher of Vishishtadvaita, there are 7 qualifications necessary in a seeker who plans to pursue devotion. What are those 7? First is Viveka, which means discrimination, mostly in food. Second is Vimukha, freedom from material desire. Third is Abhyasa, is consistent practice. Fourth is Kriya, which is the habit of doing good to others. And fifth is Kalyana, which means always doing good and thinking good for the welfare of everybody, not just my special people, but for everybody. That is Kalyana. Sixth is Anavasada, which means cheerfulness or absence of excessive sadness. And seventh is Anudarsa, which is the absence of excessive jubilation or rejoicing. Shri Krishna has taught about all of these qualities in the Bhagavad Gita. And Narad Muni is assuming that the students of Bhakti Yoga have already been following these. As you can see, the prerequisites are all qualities that need to be developed. There are no caste or race mentioned as prerequisites. In fact, there have been great saints who were born in lower castes. Saints like Nanda, Ravidas, Tirupanaivar, Tirumangayalvar, Avvayar, etc. They have demonstrated that people from any caste can succeed on the path of pure bhakti and become dear to God. With that understanding, let's go to Shloka 2, which says, Sa tvasmin parama prema rupa, which means bhakti culminates in supreme devotion and pure love for that God. A mind totally turned towards God in divine love, expecting nothing, neither bhukti nor mukti, is a mind filled with pure bhakti. See, bhukti means enjoying material pleasures, and mukti means liberation. When a mind is able to sustain this kind of divine love for God constantly and consistently, it is said to be in a state of ananya bhakti. This is the kind of mind that is very dear to God. The supreme love in God is what is termed as Siddha Bhakti or Para Bhakti. As discussed in the introduction, we have to be consistent in our practice or sadhana. Once perfected, sadhana bhakti will make us eligible for Siddha Bhakti, which is the ultimate goal and is received by God's grace alone. Apart from practicing Bhakti Yoga diligently, we need to have a firm faith that the pursuit of sadhana bhakti will lead to Siddha Bhakti. Narada Muni is explaining the state of Siddha Bhakti here. An interesting observation to be made is that in this second shloka, Narada Muni is using the word that to refer to God instead of referring to God by any particular name like Vishnu or Shiva, etc. The purpose is not to distract the students from any sectarian beliefs. As quoted in the Rig Veda, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. The truth, God, is one, but the wise describe Him in different ways. The Narad Muni wants to focus on that one absolute truth and not get distracted by the various ways in which God can be referred to us. With respect to Siddha Bhakti, if you are interested in knowing what it looks like, how does a person behave when they have Siddha Bhakti, how does God's grace come upon such a person, etc., then I strongly encourage you to read about the story of Prahalada. And that will give a very good sense about what it means to be in Siddha Bhakti. Kalpana ji, looks like you have some questions.
Yes, Guruji. So, can you please explain what is sadhana bhakti?
Sadhana is practice. So, sadhana bhakti is basically the bhakti that you develop when you are practicing bhakti yoga.
Okay, thank you. And I was also wondering how one will know if he or she has received Siddha Bhakti.
No, that's good question. But see, as discussed, Siddha Bhakti is the ultimate stage of bhakti that comes by receiving the divine grace of God. So when you have Siddha Bhakti, it means you already have received the grace of God. Now you are asking how we will know if we have received grace of God, how we will know if we have received Siddha Bhakti. No, that is like asking, how will I know that I'm in the ocean once I jump in the ocean? See, the experience of jumping in the ocean is going to be so intense and so complete. No questions would arise. You would just know that you are in the ocean. Just like that, when you receive divine grace, you can't miss that experience. You will just know it. Now, later on in the Bhakti Sutra, Narad Ji explains in detail the various symptoms that can be observed when we have achieved Siddha Bhakti. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, Guruji. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So now let's go to Shloka 3. Shloka 3 says, Amrita Swarupacha, which means in its intrinsic nature, this supreme love for the Lord, called divine love, is of the nature of immortality also. After introducing the concept of bhakti, Narad Ji is now starting to explain the benefits. Great teachers like Narada Muni have used aphorisms or true facts explained in 1 or 2 lines, just like how Sri Krishna explained the Bhagavad Gita using 2-line shlokas. Various scholars come up with multiple pages of explanation for each shloka. Similarly, we have to dive deep into each shloka of this Narada Bhakti Sutra to derive the complete meaning and context. That is the role of the teacher, to help with this kind of analysis and explanation. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, Sri Krishna has said, Kshipram bhavati dharmatma shashvat chantim nigacchati kaunteya pratijanihi na me bhaktaha pranashyati. Quickly they become virtuous and attain lasting peace, O son of Kunti. Declare it boldly that no devotee of mine is ever lost. Such a profound statement. Sri Krishna is talking about the pure devotees who are eligible for attaining Siddha Bhakti. Krishna says that such devotees attain everlasting peace. Only those who are stuck in the material realm experience the defects of mortality, which includes Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, birth, death, old age and disease. And in the material world, people feel lost. As you may recollect, Sri Krishna had termed this material world as a Moha Kalilam, a dense forest of delusion. Krishna provides a way out by assuring us that through pure bhakti, we can achieve His divine grace and get a taste of everlasting peace, which is of the nature of immortality. And once we have that divine connection with the Lord, we can never feel lost. That is the same thing Narad Ji is saying here in this 3rd sloka of Bhakti Sutra. Amrita Swarupacha. That divine love is of the nature of immortality also, which means he is also going to talk about what other aspects we can experience through pure bhakti. Now that takes us to Shlokas 4, 5 and 6, which describe the fruits of bhakti. Shloka 4 says, yallabdva puman siddho bhavati, amrito bhavati, truptho bhavati. Which means, having gained this supreme devotion, the devotee attains perfection and immortality and becomes satisfied forever. If we want to succeed in attaining God's divine love, then we should give up all other desires, including the desire for liberation. That is the fundamental difference between all other yogas and Bhakti Yoga. See, all other yogas like Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga, etc., the ultimate goal is mukti or liberation. Whereas in Bhakti Yoga, the devotee is not interested in liberation, because their ultimate goal is God's divine love and Siddha Bhakti. Many great saints have said that mukti is like the maid servant of God. And people who run behind the maid servant instead of pursuing the master, they are very foolish indeed, right? The wise run behind the master, that is God. And once they receive God's grace, mukti automatically comes under their control. Narad Ji says that by the path of pure devotion, we will become established in God's service. We will become immortal and become forever satisfied. Amrito bhavati, triptho bhavati. And this satisfaction will be complete and perfect. You see, we always feel some emptiness within our heart, no matter how much we have achieved in life. And to fill that emptiness, we keep running behind more and more things. We keep running behind different people, we go to different places, etc., etc. See, just like when we are thirsty, the only drink that can actually quench our thirst is pure water. Now, people may give you honey, they may give you alcohol, they may give you soda, whatever. But if you are really thirsty, it's only pure water that can quench that thirst. Similarly, we need to understand that this emptiness that we feel within can only be filled through the pure divine love of God and nothing else. Everything else is temporary. Only God's pure love can totally fill that emptiness. Now, once that emptiness is filled by divine love, Narad Ji says that that satisfaction we experience will be complete and perfect. Narad Ji also says Siddho Bhavati. So what is Siddhi? It is documented in the Ashtanga Yoga that as a yogi progresses in yoga, they can develop various siddhis. Siddhis like Anima, Mahima, Garima. I mean, there is power to become very small, power to become very large, power to become very heavy, etc., etc. However, we should understand that having some siddhis doesn't mean that the person is God realized. In fact, various saints have said that these siddhis are actually a huge distraction for bhakti yogis and they come in the way of God realization. Pure devotees who are aspiring for God's divine love, they are not even interested in mukti. So certainly they are not interested in siddhis. Sri Ramakrishna used to make a pun on the word siddha. In Bengali, the word siddha has another meaning. It means becoming boiled. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when a man becomes siddha, he becomes soft and tender like boiled potatoes or vegetables. And his heart melts with compassion for his fellow beings. So here, Narad Ji is talking about the devotee becoming siddha, which means the devotee's heart becomes soft, pure, and firmly established in God's loving service. Kalpana Ji, looks like you are having another question.
Yes, Guruji. So Guruji, what should a person do with the siddhis that he has acquired and also remain devoted to God?
You are asking what should a yogi do with the siddhis that they have acquired?
Yeah.
Okay.
And at the same time remain devoted to God.
See, in my opinion, achieving siddhis is like accumulating various medals and trophies. Now, siddhis should never be the goal of any yogi, especially bhakti yogi. Just like how medals and trophies should not be the goal of a sportsman. I mean, they should always appreciate if they get a medal, but they shouldn't be practicing thinking they want a particular medal. That's not what's going to lead them to excellence. Just like that, even a normal yogi, when I say normal yogi, I mean a yogi who is practicing jnana yoga or karma yoga or raja yoga, if they achieve siddhis, they just should make sure they're not getting attached to it. As Krishna says, we should neither be attached nor should we have any aversion to anything. So, the yogi should not be attached to siddhis. At the same time, they shouldn't be trying to run away from siddhis. If a siddhi comes, it comes. So the point is, don't be attached to a siddhi, and certainly don't make a show out of the siddhis, because that only distracts the yogi from their ultimate goal. So there are examples of some really great saints like Shirdi Sai Baba who have had siddhis, and they have only used the siddhi for the welfare of human beings. So this is again my opinion, that if a yogi does get siddhis, they should at the most use it either to serve God or to serve humanity. The other very famous example is that of Hanumanji. Hanumanji had all the siddhis possible. Like he could become as small as possible, he could become as big as possible, he could fly through air. But as you could see in the Ramayana, Hanumanji used the siddhis only to serve Lord Rama. Hanumanji never made a show of those siddhis.
Right.
So I think we can learn from those examples. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much.
So now let's go to Shloka 5. Yat prapya na kinchid vanchati na soshati na dveshti na ramate notsahi bhavati. Which means, on attaining that, a man does not desire anything else. He grieves no more, is free from hatred or jealousy. He does not take pleasure in the vanities of life, and he loses all eagerness to gain anything for himself. Here Narad Ji says that a person who receives divine love has no other desires. Once a person attains this state, they feel the need for nothing else. We should understand that we cannot grow in bhakti as long as we have desires. That is because our mind is not capable of attaching to more than one place or object at any given moment. In other words, we can be having a million thoughts, but the mind can always attach only to one thing at a given time. So when we have various desires, our mind will go and attach to the object of those desires, and it will take itself away from God, who should be the ultimate object of our divine love or bhakti. The Sanskrit word nishkama means desirelessness, and purnakama means complete fulfillment of all desires. A pure devotee is purnakama because they experience complete fulfillment. There is nothing more to gain or to achieve. Kinchida vanchati. This devotion is free from desires. And na shochati. Free from lamentation. What is lamentation? See, when we focus on the past, we tend to lament. And as we discussed in the Bhagavad Gita, when we use our dhriti or willpower in a tamasic or negative way, we hold on to the past, and that causes lamentation, depression, etc. Na ramate. At the same time, we should not be overexcited or rejoice at positive outcomes. Sri Krishna has emphasized the importance of equanimity of mind many times in the Bhagavad Gita. Specifically in chapter 12, verse 17, he says, Yo na hrishyati, na dveshti, na shochati, na kankshati, shubha shubha parityagi, bhaktiman ya sa me priya. Those who neither rejoice in mundane pleasures nor despair in worldly sorrows, who neither lament for any loss nor hanker for any gain, who renounce both good and evil deeds. Such persons who are full of devotion are very dear to me. A devotee is able to progress on the path of Bhakti Yoga only when they are able to stay in the present and engage their minds in Chintan. Chintan means meditating upon or thinking about. Chintan of Guru and God. Sri Krishna has said this in the Bhagavad Gita again in chapter 9 verse 22. It's a very popular verse. Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. There are those who always think of me and engage in exclusive devotion to me. To them whose minds are always absorbed in me, I provide what they lack and preserve what they already possess. Now that is such a profound assurance from Lord Krishna, where he says constant and consistent focus on God, ananya chintan, that is the key to succeeding in bhakti yoga. And that is not possible if our mind is running all over the place with desires, or if our mind gets stuck in the past and keeps lamenting. I mean, if it is so stuck in the past, how can it practice ananya bhakti? So again, when we are stuck in the past, we tend to become depressed. When we are stuck in the future, we tend to become anxious. True bliss comes only when we are able to live in the present. That is the secret behind the popular statement used in India. A lot of people always say, "Jo bhi hua, achhe ke liye hua," which means whatever happened, happened for the good. See, we cannot change what has already happened in the past. So then what is the right way to deal with it? Because you cannot anyways change what has happened in the past, if we are able to look at the past events favorably, thinking that it was for our own spiritual growth, then we will not give in to lamenting. We will instead be able to practice chintan of God. Because we will say, okay, what happened in the past was for my own spiritual growth. I will just look at what I take away from that experience, how I grow from that experience. And at the most, how I use that experience to make sure I don't get into similar situations in future. That's all. And then we get unstuck from that past and bring our mind to the present and continue focusing on God and practicing ananya chintan. Actually, we can learn about pure bhakti from divine gopis of Vrindavan, who had the great fortune of being close to Krishna. These gopis used to openly confess. They used to say, we cannot shift our mind even for a moment from our beloved Krishna. How can we strive for getting any worldly objects? Or how can we lament over anything? Because our minds are so busy focusing on Krishna. Our minds know nothing other than Krishna. See, that is the state of ananya chintan that a bhakti yogi should strive to reach. And then Narad Ji says, na dveshti. Dvesham means hatred. So Narad Ji says, a devotee does not hate anyone. Shri Krishna also advised us to avoid attachment as well as aversion. See, when we hate somebody or something, our mind will attach itself to that object or person. And it will not let us live in the present, and it will also distract us from our focus on God. Swami Mukundananda Ji says that wherever possible, we should avoid needless confrontation with people. In one of his lectures, he has explained this through a story of a dog that has spent all its life in the village. A friend dog from a city comes to visit this dog, and that dog says, come on, you have spent all your life in a village. You don't have any idea how a city is. You should come with me and take a look at the city. The village dog is hesitant at first, but the city dog convinces this dog to come with him. So this dog asks, okay, so how long is it going to take to reach the city? And the dog says, well, if we move fast, we can reach within 2 days. If we move slow, it may take us 4 days. So let's try to move fast. And the village dog is not convinced. The village dog says, hey, I have heard that the city is very far away, so I have no idea what you are talking about. How can we reach in 2 days? But let's see, I'll come with you and then let's see how it goes. So they both start going towards the city. On the way, they enter a village, another village on the way, and as soon as they enter the village dogs start barking and chasing these two dogs. Now, this village dog is not used to this because it has spent all its life in its own village. So it's always been in its own territory. So it is not used to other dogs barking at it and trying to chase it away. Whereas the city dog has seen it all. It has all this experience of dogs chasing and barking and all of that. So the city dog advises the village dog, don't get into confrontation with these dogs. They are barking, they are trying to chase us away. Let us just move away. Let's just go away from this village and let us carry on with our journey. So like that, they go to the next village, the same thing happens. They go to the third village, the same thing happens. And they don't stop in any village. Initially, they thought they're going to take rest in each village. But based on the advice of the city dog, they just keep moving. And within 2 days, they land in the city. And the city dog tells the village dog, see, I told you, we will reach the city within 2 days. So what is the tatparya? What is the lesson from the story is that if these dogs had chosen to confront the barking dogs in the first village or the second village or the following villages, they would have gotten into fights, they would have got hurt, they would have got tired, and eventually their journey would have taken a lot longer. Maybe it would have taken them 4 days, 5 days, God knows. Similarly, in our lives, we will come across many hostile people. And if we choose to confront each one of them, it is only going to delay our own journey, especially our spiritual journey. So the key is avoid confrontation, unnecessary confrontation. It's not our job to correct everybody. If you come across somebody unpleasant, try to ignore, be indifferent, and just move on. And the key is to forget, forgive, and move on. So let us keep this in mind. The next time somebody overtakes us the wrong way on a highway, or if somebody honks unnecessarily at us, or when someone seems to take forever to board the elevator. Now, these are all examples where we can either choose to confront these people, get in confrontations, or just tolerate and let go, forgive and move on. That's the lesson here. And na utsahi bhava. Don't keep worldly ambitions. This is another aspect of the very famous teaching from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 47. This is probably the most popular verse in the Bhagavad Gita because all the major TV serials in Bhagavad Gita, they play this shloka. This shloka, you might have heard it. Karmanne vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalaheturburma te sangotsava karmani. What Krishna is saying there is, you have a right to perform your duties, but you are not entitled to the fruits of your actions. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, nor be attached to inaction. It's an extremely profound shloka. That shloka itself, we can write an entire book on it. The key takeaway is always do your duties, but never be attached to outcomes. Now, we can follow this principle only when we stop having worldly ambitions. Our only ambition should be to attain God's Siddha Bhakti. That is the ultimate goal of Bhakti Yoga. Kalpana ji, looks like you again have some questions.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot. So, yeah, my first question is I feel like the mind is like a pendulum. It keeps oscillating from past to future and future to past, and many times it gets stuck in one of these places. So Guruji, can you suggest some ways of bringing the mind back to the present?
Yeah, that is a kind of a deep question, if not a tough question. See, the mind is very difficult to control. If you remember, we read in Bhagavad Gita where Arjuna confessed to Shri Krishna. He said it is probably easier to hold air in his fist than to control the mind. And Krishna had a very simple answer. I mean, again, the Krishna's fundamental basic answer was to avoid attachment as well as aversion. Don't be attached to the past. At the same time, don't try to run away from the past. Just like that, don't worry too much about the future. No, we should realize that we have to just keep doing your duties without any attachments. and know that you cannot control the outcome. So there is no point getting attached to the outcomes. A simple example, let us say you are a archer or a shooter. In modern world, let's say shooting, that makes more sense. So what is in your control? You can buy the best possible gun. You can buy the best possible bullets. You can practice day and night. You can wear the best clothes. You can have the best goggles. The best of everything, 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 everything. Finally, you are standing with the best gun, wearing the best clothes, with the best goggles, and you are pointing at the target. Now you pull the trigger, and just when you pull the trigger, the target moves. Now is that in your control? But if you kept worrying about the target moving, oh, I hope the target doesn't move, I hope the target stays where it is. If that is what is in your mind all the time, you cannot take perfect aim. Your mind is not in the aim. Your mind is occupied with the target moving or not moving. It seems simple, right? I mean, that is exactly what Sri Krishna is saying when he says, don't be attached to the outcome. Your job is to take the perfect aim and shoot. Now, whether the bullet actually hits the target, that's not in your control. And don't worry about it. In my opinion, that seems like a very practical advice. Now, just like that, when you catch your mind thinking about the past or worrying about the future, don't try to force it not to think about the past or future, because then that becomes aversion. And that is what Krishna said, avoid attachment as well as avoid aversion, because that won't work. Another simple example is, say you are a big fan of coffee. So all day you are running behind coffee. I want coffee, 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 coffee. Then some Guruji comes and says, hey, coffee, your mind is too attached to coffee, please stop it. And then you say, okay, from now onwards, no coffee. So instead of saying coffee, coffee, now you start saying no coffee, no coffee, no coffee. But see, what is the point? Because again, the central object of attention is coffee. You either say yes coffee or you say no coffee. But again, you're thinking about only coffee. That is what Krishna says, or that is what Krishna means when he says no attachment and no aversion. So if you catch your mind being attached or stuck somewhere, you don't want to unstuck it. That doesn't work that way. Rather, the simple solution given by Sri Krishna himself is replace those thoughts. When you catch your mind thinking about something in the past, replace that thought with thought of God. You can think about the divine qualities of God. You can think about how you can serve God. You can think about what are the teachings of God. There are so many things, like just replace those thoughts with thoughts of God. That is the most effective way to bring the mind back to the present. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Yeah, a couple of more.
Couple of more, okay.
Yeah.
Let's have 2 more questions then.
Yeah. How can you practically apply the principle of do your duty but don't be attached to the outcome, especially in corporate life?
Great question. And to be honest, I am from the corporate sector myself. I have been in the corporate sector for more than 25 years. So I can say out of experience that in the corporate world, it is actually very important that we follow the principles of doing your duties without being attached to outcome. For example, if someone is all the time focusing on getting a promotion, the chances are high that the promotion will get delayed. Instead, if that person focuses on doing a good job, a promotion would naturally follow.
Right.
It is a common saying in the corporate world that one should focus on excellence and the rewards will automatically follow. It's actually simple. It may seem like a complicated topic. It's very simple because, see, when you focus on outcomes, that tends to make a person desperate. And when someone is in a mode of desperation, they tend to make mistakes. And then when they make mistakes, it takes them further away from the expected outcomes. So it actually has the opposite effect. You think if you are attached to the outcome will come quickly. No. If you are very attached to the outcome actually goes further away from you. It becomes more difficult. So, Sri Krishna's message of doing your duties without being attached to outcome, it is a master class in human psychology. And it applies to all areas of life, including the corporate sector. Hope that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and my last question is, you say we can follow the above principle only when we stop having material ambitions. So my question is it wrong to want to progress in material life? Is it wrong to want to give your kids and family a better life? And how do you strike a balance between the material and spiritual aspect of life?
Okay, that's a compound question. There is certainly nothing wrong in making progress or succeeding in material life. In fact, Sri Krishna's teachings help us succeed in the material world as well as in the spiritual world. All Krishna says, and even what Narad Ji says, is to avoid getting attached to the material world or the success that you get in the material world. Like we just discussed about the athlete. I mean, there is nothing wrong in that athlete getting medals. But the athlete shouldn't get so attached to the medal that they lose focus on the sport. You know, oh, this medal is so beautiful, this medal is so shiny, and now instead of practicing, every day they are polishing the medal and they are spending all the time there. That is the attachment. It is only going to, take them away from excellence. That is the exact message Sri Krishna gave Arjuna in the battlefield. Sri Krishna said, go and fight the war without any fear, without being attached to the outcome, because fear comes only when you are attached to the outcome. The moment you say, I hope I don't fail, I hope I'm not defeated, that causes fear. But that thought, I hope I don't get defeated, implies you are attached to the outcome. You are not focusing on the battle, you are focusing on the outcome. When we are attached to the outcome, we lose focus on the task at hand. As simple as that. The second part of your question, striking a balance between material and spiritual world. See, the question about striking a balance between material and spiritual world, that question itself implies that somehow material and spiritual worlds are contradicting and conflicting with each other. See, that is not the case. We should look at them as complementing each other. When we progress in the material world, we gain the resources required to help us practice spirituality. If we are always struggling to make ends meet, then we cannot focus on spirituality. Likewise, when we focus spiritually, we are able to handle the challenges of the material world better. We are able to handle the challenges of the material world in a calm and effective way that helps us succeed more in the material world. You see, it's very complementary and not contradictory. I hope this makes sense.
Yes, very nice, Guruji. Thank you so much.
Most welcome. So, I think we have time to finish the last shloka for today, which is Shloka 6. So, Shloka 6 says, Yagyatva matho bhavati stabdho bhavati atmaramo bhavati, which means, having known which, devotion, man becomes intoxicated, silent, and takes his delight in the Atman. Narad Ji provides a description of what happens when we achieve pure devotion to God. Matho bhavati. The devotee will become intoxicated with divine love. Remember Sri Krishna's teachings about Shreya. Shreya means good and right happiness, and Preya means inferior happiness. The worldly intoxicants are Preya because they are temporary, they cause pain in the long run. Whereas the intoxication of God's divine love is Shreya. It is eternal and can never cause any pain or unhappiness. Stabdho bhavati is getting into a trance-like state and being in a samadhi. Atmaramo bhavati, Atmaram, is somebody who rejoices in the self-realized soul. Bhagavad Gita also has this shloka. Yas tvatma ratir evasyad atmatriptascha manavaha atmanyevacha santushtas tasya karyam na vidyate. Those who rejoice in the self, who are illumined and fully satisfied in the self, for them there is no duty. Just knowing God will make us fall in love with God. So as an example, see, when we were kids, if somebody came and told us we could either have an entire country or we could have a box of chocolates, we would have chosen the box of chocolates. Because when we were kids, we just did not understand what is the value of a country. I mean, we didn't know what is a country and we didn't know what is the value of a country. We but understood box of chocolates. We knew how precious the box of chocolates were. That's why we chose that. Similarly, people desire for material things only because they don't yet know the value of God. Once we understand the value of God, we will totally fall in love with God and we will not desire anything else. Yagyatva, once we have this divine knowledge, belief and conviction, even taking the name of God would take us to the state of stabdho bhavati. So that is the 6th shloka. So I hope this all made sense. I hope your questions were answered. So with this, I would like to conclude my part of the podcast for this session. Again, this is Krishna Dasa. And to all my listeners, I really appreciate, I'm grateful to you for listening to my podcast. And if you have any questions or if you want to contact me, you can contact me through the contact page of pragmaticgeeta.com. So thank you again for listening to today's session, and I'm looking forward to continue this podcast series. And in the next podcast, we will start from Shloka 7. Thank you very much, Kalpana ji, for being here and supporting this podcast and asking your wonderful questions.
Thank you, Guruji. Got a lot of my questions answered actually. Thank you so much for inviting me here.
Most welcome, and hopefully see you again during the next podcast.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.